welcome to Pain in the Podcast, your place to find out everything you've ever wanted to know about pain. My name's Dr. Joseph Parsons, and I'm joined by the wonderful Dr. Joshua Craw and Don Rafteryet. Today, we're going to be talking about the societal costs of chronic pain. Welcome in.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Pain in the Podcast. As with every week, we're going to tell you one fact about ourselves, and you can just get to know us a little bit more as you listen. So what's my fact about myself? I broke my finger. There we go. Easy one. Did it through an embarrassing bowling-related injury. It's nothing glamorous, but it is what it is.
And how did you do it, Don?
There's no need to go into the details.
Were you trying to copy professional technique and threw the ball into the floor?
I would say I did it successfully. Not on that round, but on the round following that, because I didn't realise I broke my finger at the time.
Shit.
Well, and I still kind of technically won. The only person that beat me was someone with the bumpers, and I don't think that counts.
No, you're right.
I do have a question as well, though.
What's your question, Josh?
What did you score with that broken finger bowl?
I think it was close to 90.
No, with the one ball.
With the No, that was definitely just a gutter ball.
No.
Oh, right. I was
Yeah.
going to say, it doesn't seem worth it. You've got 10 fingers, 10 gutter balls.
Yeah, no. It
A
wasn't
possible 12 balls in a end frame? 12?
Well, you get 15, don't you? Because you get an extra 3 at the end.
You don't always get 3 at the end.
But
No.
if you get strike.
Theoretically, if you used to
Oh,
get...
you just assume that I'm good enough.
I'm assuming you're getting the 300.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just did not expect to get into talking about bowling so
No, I
quickly.
didn't.
Cool.
So there's my fact about myself. What about you, Josh?
So my fact this week is that I'm actually really, really talented when it comes to making animal noises. So much so that Joe's making a face now. For those that don't know, I once did the most perfect dolphin noise, and I've refused to do it ever since.
One hit wonder.
And that's not going to change today. I am going to, however, make an owl noise. Okay, here we go.
I'd argue that's just more of a train whistle than an owl.
You could do, but in fact, that wasn't just one owl, that was 2 owls.
On a train.
You could have been on a train, yeah, that's true, but the point stands.
Okay. Impressive.
Thank you.
Yeah. Right, my fact about myself this week is that I once won a raw prawn as first prize in a swing dancing competition in Melbourne.
Was it thrown at you?
No, it was a seafood and jazz festival, and the prize was a raw prawn. It was 37 degrees that day. We did not go home for 6 hours. It's safe to say that prawn never got eaten.
Cooked in your pocket.
I'm really happy that you didn't eat that prawn.
Yeah, it was dangerous when they gave it to us.
I'd have been tempted.
How was it presented?
It was presented in a Ferrero Rocher box. They just removed the chocolate and put a massive prawn inside. It was a really big
With the
prawn.
gold little...
No, they put the wrapping back. They put the bow back on.
Classy.
Yeah, it was nice. And it was wrapped in nice tissue wrapping
Gold
paper.
tissue
Confetti.
Yeah,
sort of.
yeah. No, but the nice,
crumply,
very crumply one.
yeah.
Yeah. Either way. Don.
Fantastic. So now we come on to the part where we talk about what we've learned about ourselves this week. And I'll go again first. What have I learned about myself this week? I'd say I've learned that I show off a bit too much when I'm bowling. Yeah.
It's probably fair considering...
I tried to do what the pros do. I could not do what the pros do. That's why they're the pros. And I ended up with a broken finger.
Wow.
That's always been my issue in the past, trying to amplify the pros and just breaking a finger.
Failing miserably.
See, what we really should have done in the previous episode where we did the 20-hour challenge is given Don bowling.
Yeah, we should have.
We should have.
I've
Yeah.
been an expert. This would never have happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean after the broken finger.
Oh.
I mean, we should have waited for that episode.
You're such kind-hearted people.
Yeah, exactly. Either way. Josh, do you want to go next?
Absolutely. So the thing that I've learned about myself this week, it's actually quite a practical thing. It's, back pain in the morning after I've walked to work, about half an hour after I started work, I start to get low back pain. I've actually found out that if I just take paracetamol as soon as I get up, it actually quite helps with that. So, actually quite a good, useful thing for me.
That is super relevant to the podcast.
Who knew?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's the most relevant thing we've learned about ourselves that we've ever had.
I know. Well, what can I say? Just keep coming back. I'll keep knocking them down with these really good things I've learned about myself.
Nice.
What about you, Joe?
I've learned about myself that I am lovable.
You are?
I am lovable. I am engaged. Very exciting news for podcast fans. Myself and my girlfriend have got engaged very recently.
Woo!
So, woo! I am lovable. Who would have thought it? Especially being around you two. Like,
I would never
I know
have thought that.
you'd never love me. No. So there you go.
Very much conditional, though.
So today we are going to be talking about the societal costs of chronic pain. So what do we mean by this? What we mean is, how does the burden of chronic pain affect society as a whole? So what are the economic impacts, what are the mental health impacts, the impacts on the workforce, and a little bit more.
Yeah, and of course there are going to be some very big numbers thrown about here throughout the episode. So each time, just to help with comparison to something that we all know the value of, I'm going to compare the value to a Freddo bar. For those not in the know, this is a British confectionery, about two-thirds of an ounce of chocolate, 18 grams-ish.
Yeah, very small.
Yeah, costs about 30 pence. I mean...
And used to cost?
It used to cost 10 pence.
Yeah.
And before that?
Still 10 pence, because that's the lowest cost it has ever been.
It's an urban legend and it's 5p.
It is an urban legend.
It's a Mandela effect.
Oh,
Everyone's
okay.
convinced themselves that it's...
Joe's brother is a propagator of that Mandela effect.
He is very
as
much
well.
a propagator of that effect.
And, well, actually saying that, by the time this airs, Freddos might be £10 each.
Yeah.
Considering the inflation. But, yeah. So, how about we start?
Right, we'll start off with a shocking statistic, shall we? So, chronic pain costs more to society than cancer does, and diabetes and heart disease combined. In the US, each year, chronic pain costs about $630 billion.
Now, to equate that to our Freddo index, that works out to approximately 2 trillion Freddos, which I'm going to guess is more Freddos than has ever been created. Or you could buy the International Space Station 4 times.
Or?
I suppose alternatively, you could, rent the country of Liechtenstein.
Excuse me?
Yeah, so...
How long could you rent it for, Josh?
Roughly about 25,000 years. So it'd see you through at least your life.
Had a few generations.
How does one go about renting Liechtenstein?
Well, you can't actually rent Liechtenstein as it is now. They stopped allowing that in 2011.
What a
But
shame.
for the lowly price of $70,000, you could rent the entirety of Liechtenstein. You could have free reign, go about in any public buildings. Of course, the Liechtenstein population is still there, so you can't go into their houses.
So you can't do a
Without
purge.
permission.
Without
You can't do the purge, no.
Well, wow, oh my god!
That's what he said. I didn't say.
Wow, going around the castles, just
What
slaying.
else would you do when you've rented an entire, I don't know, territory?
I mean, I wouldn't go around murdering people.
Oh, alright. So it's just me.
Just you, Don. Yeah,
Wow.
this is. Yeah,
I've learned another thing about myself.
yeah. That's one thing we've learned about Don this week. Don't
Is
let
that he
him.
would kill people if he had access to a full country.
Anybody that's an Airbnb host out there, if you see somebody called Mr. Wujasauria, my advice would be. Don't
I'll
let
have you
him
know,
stay.
my Uber rating and my Airbnb rating, well, actually not my Airbnb rating, because I've never booked an Airbnb, but my Uber rating is quite stellar.
Is that
But you
because
don't
you're killing-
live in an Uber, do you? You don't go on holiday in an Uber.
No, I've done some bad things in an Uber though.
Is that
jeez.
because every time anybody's about to give you a bad review, you kill them?
We'll never know. Moving on.
Should we go back to the 630 billion?
We'll go back to the 630 billion.
Cool.
Yeah. If you could just find a way to save 6% of that money and fund it towards another cause, we could cure world hunger by 2030. Yes, 6 years from now. All this, and yet I have friends who still don't really understand what chronic pain is. They have no concept of it being constant, and they, luckily for them, don't understand the burden that it puts on people's lives.
But it's not just the US, Don, that has such a high cost of chronic pain. Ireland have 3% of their GDP each year spent on chronic pain. So that's 14.42 billion British pounds, or $18 billion. So to keep the Freddo metric, that's 57.7 million Freddos.
A whole lot of.
Now, I was looking on Google for things that cost $18 billion, and the only thing that came up was a Quora question. I don't know if anyone's seen Quora. It's like Yahoo Answers. It's like an updated version.
Yeah.
And it said, would you stamp on Stuart Little for $18 billion?
Oh my gosh!
And 88% of users said yes. And one guy said, I'd demolish him for free.
What a tragedy!
That guy's evaded tax for 20 years. So there you go. Either way, there you go. £18 billion, one guy would demolish Stuart Little for free. And you'd have 18 billion left over.
I mean, I'd probably do it for... Oh, well, it's a mouse, isn't it? So, I mean, I'd probably not do it. But
I'd probably take his tiny little Converse shoes and then do it.
What, in case they fit you?
is he going to be talking to me whilst I'm doing it?
What would he
I
say?
don't know. I didn't think the Stuart Little part would get this much discussion.
It's got quite a bit of traction.
Yeah.
Unlike his little Converse shoes.
Okay, so going back on percentages GDP, so 2.71% of Portugal's GDP is spent on chronic pain. This is $6.9 billion, or 22.3 billion Freddos. Like, if you wanted to put that into context, like 6.9 billion is more than the entire GDP of the Maldives.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a lot.
It's a lot of money.
Back pain alone costs 2.2% of Germany's GDP. That's about $93.7 billion. Nearly 303 billion Freddos. This is the value of the new Artemis moon landing program.
And I promise you, this podcast is not just going to be us listing countries' GDPs and how much they spend on chronic pain, but one more. In the Netherlands, back pain costs 1.7% of their GDP, so that's $17.2 billion, or 55.6 billion Freddos.
So the Netherlands are doing quite well then, in terms of how much of the GDP they're spending on chronic pain.
Compared to other people, they're doing okay.
Yeah.
They're doing
If we're
okay.
assuming that spending more is not as good.
Yeah. Well, they might just be neglecting the patients.
Oh, God.
Who knows? With the $17.2 billion, you could buy a fair few Rolexes, right?
Just a few.
You could actually buy all of Rolex twice. So you can see from all these examples how obscenely expensive chronic pain is to society. So it's really confusing to, I think, all of us that chronic pain is still treated as such a rarity. So here in the UK, the best estimates of the prevalence for chronic pain is 43.5% of adults. So that's 23 million people in the UK. That's just under 1 in 2 adults in the UK have chronic pain. Now, a lot of these people are older, a lot of these people maybe have arthritis or something, and they don't recognise the fact that being in pain constantly means chronic pain. They kind of don't want to put that label on it, but that's like the kind of proportion of the population who are suffering from chronic pain. So why is it the pain's so costly, and what can we do about it?
Well, there's a few factors that combine to make pain so expensive. Firstly, there's a number of appointments. There's the medications, comorbidities, carers, and the time off work. And that's only just scratching the surface. There are so many more factors that we couldn't possibly fully appreciate.
Alright, so how about we just start looking at one of them? So at least 15% of GP appointments in the UK are due to chronic back pain alone. And the NHS website says there are 300 million appointments per year. That would mean that there were 45 million appointments per year for chronic back pain alone.
So that stat always confused me. Like it's all over the NHS website. If you Google how many GP appointments are there per year in the UK, it comes up with 300 million, right? But there's only 36,000 GPs in the UK, and they would need to do 8,000 appointments per year, which equates to 22 appointments a day. Now, I found another source that says in England, only 27 million appointments are used each year. And so either the first stat from the NHS website is wrong, or Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland have 273 million appointments per year. So,
Sounds feasible.
yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, so there's the summary is there's a lot of appointments due to chronic pain, right?
I mean, yeah. Do you know those figures that we was talking about, 300 million? And you're saying, oh, GPs have to do 22 appointments a day. If you think about it, a GP's appointment in the UK is only actually 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's actually what, less than 4 hours a day per GP?
But they'd have to work every day of the year,
But if they work
5 days a week.
10 hours a day,
Yeah,
they could potentially see between 60 and 70 patients.
yeah.
So it could potentially be feasible. I agree. I think it's an absolute massively overestimate.
Yeah.
But
It is possible, I guess.
yeah, and as we said, the majority of those are due to chronic pain. Like particularly back pain has just got such a huge burden on the NHS. And the thing is, we don't really have that many good treatments for back pain.
No.
And I think that's what the frustrating thing is, because people then keep going back to the GP because, well, they're not getting any relief from this chronic pain.
Yeah. Well, it makes you think, doesn't it? How many times is it the same patient going back to the same GP in a year? Like, if there are 8,000 appointments in a year per GP,
Oh,
is it 15, 20 for every back pain patient? Like, who knows? It's
invariably.
a lot.
Like using hospital admissions, for example.
Yeah.
Working in the emergency department at the minute, and I literally see the same patients every single day. Like there are some patients there that are genuinely in the hospital more than I am, and that's not just because they've got an extended stay. That's to keep coming back every day.
Constantly falling into emergencies.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the point, is that they're not actually, like, either they've got a chronic health problem that isn't going to be helped by being in A&E and they're turning up again, or there might be an element of hypochondria for some individuals, or they might just not be getting help every time they come, so they just keep coming until someone helps them. Like,
Yeah. Now, a big disclaimer. Obviously, if you feel like you're unwell enough that you need to go to the emergency department, you do need to go to the emergency department.
Yeah.
We're talking about the very, 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 very small minority of patients who, I won't say abuse services, but overuse services, definitely.
Yeah.
So as you've heard in a previous episode, the lack of pain training that GPs get means that there are a lot of inappropriate referrals and treatments which get chronic pain patients stuck in a revolving door, coming back to their GPs time after time.
And in fact, 29% of the people who come into a GP with chronic back pain will be back in the GP for the same complaint within 3 months. And so that means that nearly a third of people are not receiving what they deem to be sufficient care. And so I think this is where we need to give people earlier on their journey the tools that they need to manage their own health. Now, one of the important things is helping people to recognise that every element of their life is related to their pain, and it's quite a hard thing to accept, but recognising that your diet, your sleep, how much you exercise, your social life, like all of these things are intrinsically linked to your pain. And some people's self-management will use different elements of all these things, but recognising they're all related is important. And then they can use that information to work out what they can do to reduce the impact the pain has on their life. So I'm interested to know, what method do you guys use for self-management for your own sort of pain conditions?
Josh, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty bad at it, to be honest. You know, I suppose I'm not the only one. Like many listeners who are hearing this, life gets in the way, doesn't it? Like it can be difficult to really look after yourself and manage your health. You try to sort of stay active. You know, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah.
But other than that, and simple pain relief, it can be difficult. Like how do you know what information to look out for? How do you know what's actually going to work?
Yeah.
You find yourself down a lot of dead ends, and then that just compounds, really, doesn't it? You start to get disenfranchised with the entire system and how things work. It's just...
Yeah. And that's what we're here for. We're here to give you accurate and important information about your pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
Don?
welcome. No, I completely agree with that. I know I've tried quite a few things, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it just depends on the day, really. But like you said, exercise for me has helped a decent amount, I think. Just because it's something that you can keep going to, it's consistent, it's easy to do, and it has other benefits as well sometimes, which I think they all just compound into making your life just that little bit easier.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean, it's easier said though. Like, it's fair enough for us. Where what in our 20s/30s, yeah, exercise might be a lot easier for us. But like, if you're in your 60s and you're throwing your back out, what options do people actually have?
Yeah.
It can be very limiting. And quite honestly, if you've got chronic back pain, your mood's low, are you gonna have the energy to do that? And like, what is there out there?
Yeah. There is plenty out there, and we will get to that in future episodes, but it's finding it is the problem. Like, all the resources for pain, unless you're willing to treat it like a full-time job, it's really challenging to go out there and go fishing for all the things that you need to help you with exercise, and all the things with diet, and all the things with sleep, and all the things with social prescribing and carer support. Like, there's just so much to kind of manage.
Yeah, so I remember the last time that I went to not my personal GP, but saw a GP about back pain. It happens every few months. I'll sort of like just roll over in bed awkwardly and I just feel my back go. Like, I don't know if it's like a disc that's pressing on something, but I physically can't stand up. Like, the act of gravity pressing down on my spine just feels like a 10 out of 10 pain.
Oh, gravity, you bitch.
I know, it's always going to get us down, isn't it? But yeah, I remember going to the GP, like, at this point, like, if there was a fire in my house, wouldn't have been able to get out of bed. That's like how severe the pain is. And eventually, slow moving, getting a bit more active, and actually being able to get to the point where I can stand up and get to a doctor.
Yeah.
Like, how excruciating it is, the energy that it took, both physically and emotionally, to be able to get to a doctor. And getting to the doctor and saying, oh, here's some naproxen.
Yeah.
So, oh.
And how much did the naproxen help?
To be quite honest, I didn't even fill out the prescription.
Oh.
I had some ibuprofen at home, so...
Yeah. Both NSAIDs, much of a muchness.
Yeah, what's those?
Yeah.
Doctors typically use the thing of, naproxen's a stronger NSAID, but, like, the effects aren't really that much better. I mean, we'll talk about all this on a later episode when we talk about medications, but, yeah, it can be quite disheartening. And there's that 10-minute sort of window for a GP to solve my back pain there and then.
Yeah.
It's no wonder that 29% of people represent within 3 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, on a slightly more light note,
we have Josh's 20-hour challenge. Now, you might remember from episode 3 that we spoke about clinicians and their pain education, and we said that healthcare professionals across the world almost all get less than 20 hours of training relating to pain during their undergraduate degrees. And so we wanted to work out whether you can indeed become an expert in a topic and know enough about it within 20 hours. And so last week we had Don's slam poetry and the first couple of hours of his progress, so you can catch up with more of that on our Patreon. And this week, Don and I have challenged Josh to start off his 20-hour challenge playing the recorder. So please protect your ears and see how Josh gets on.
Okay, so this is after roughly 1 hour of lessons. I say lessons, I've been using YouTube primarily, so it's a very available resource, isn't it? So let's have a crack at a very, very basic and rudimentary song. And there we have it. Merrily We're Along by Dr. Crow.
1 hour in, he's already doing Merrily We Roll Along. What's the next challenge on the list?
Yeah, I think maybe Twinkle Twinkle.
Okay.
Or maybe Three Blind Mice. Who knows? That's a classic, isn't it?
Have we got any progress towards either of those?
Got a little bit of progress in terms of Twinkle Twinkle, but it's not very good.
Can we hear it?
Yes, of course. Oh, there we go. That's a bad start, isn't it? I'm going to just get my finger in good. A little bit of finger in.
Good fingering.
Nope. And then I can't remember.
Right, and then it becomes jazz.
And then I just go into interpretive jazz. You know, a bit of a... But, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's after 1 hour. I mean, I don't think I can expect too much more from that. I'm sort of getting used to the size and the distance of the holes. I suppose in terms of pain, education, maybe I've just had a look at the pain who ladder.
There you go. What a start.
Here we go.
He's proven us wrong. He's doing so well with his recorder. And don't forget, Josh is actually building up to performing live at the end of these 20 hours in front of an audience. So if you want to see his progress towards that and you want to see his final performance, keep an eye on our social media and head on over to our Patreon if you want to see all of his progress. And now back to the episode.
Talking about how we can reduce appointments and have more appropriate appointments, I've come up with a game which I call Dr. Google. So we've all done it, we're all guilty, and of course we want to be educated in what our bodies are doing. We get a symptom, we type it into Google, and we find out what horrific disease we've got. Or not, as may be the case. So, what we've done is, we're using an example, what I think is a very typical example, being a doctor. This is like a textbook example of a 40-year-old woman with fibromyalgia. Maybe you haven't got a diagnosis yet, but sort of you're experiencing all these symptoms, very real symptoms, and you're typing them into Google.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Should we have a go?
Let's do it.
So, first of all, what do you reckon's the top symptom of fibromyalgia?
Pain, right? It's got to be pain.
Pain?
Yeah, absolutely. Chronic pain. And what do you think Dr. Google, I say Dr. Google, it's one of those websites, we all know the name, but, don't want to get sued, want to keep all that Patreon money. So...
That's sweet, sweet Patreon money.
Yeah. Here we are, episode 4, rolling in it.
Yeah. Making literally tens of pence.
Literally tens of pence. Maybe not even that. So chronic pain, if you type that into Dr. Google, I've got chronic pain. What do you reckon the diagnoses that come up? We'll start off with male and female. 40-year-old with chronic pain.
Right. So 40-year-old male with chronic pain. Actually, 40-year-old anyone with chronic pain, maybe like arthritis, like beginnings of some arthritis.
Yeah, I think that's quite reasonable. Yeah. Like maybe you've played heavy contact sports.
Exactly.
When you was younger, now it's starting to catch up with you.
Mm-hmm. What would my guess be? I don't know, really. No idea, yeah.
Well, what Dr. Google says is for chronic pain is depression. So straight in there.
Is this men or women?
This is both.
Okay.
Well, depression is top for men.
Okay, yeah.
So straight in there, you've got some pain. Dr. Google saying you're depressed. I mean, you can be the judge of that, but it's not necessarily the first thing I'd be thinking about if somebody came to me and saying they've got chronic pain. Second, this is for men and women, is sickle cell.
What is sickle cell?
Sickle cell in the UK is incredibly rare. It typically affects people of sub-Saharan African descent.
Mm-hmm.
Can affect other groups of people, but it's where the blood is sickle-shaped instead of nice and like donut-shaped.
So rather than being like this, that's like the normal shape of a red blood cell. It's
Yeah,
like biconcave.
So what happens with that is that gets clogged up all over, causes a great deal of pain and swelling. So it can actually cause pain. So it's reasonable, but I wouldn't say it's more reasonable than all the other diagnoses that you could possibly have for chronic pain.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, though, if you type into this Dr. Google, a woman with chronic pain, it does actually say that the most common thing should be fibromyalgia. So bam, it's got the diagnosis there and there.
What about if you add in some more fibro symptoms? What does it start to come up with? So what if you add in like fatigue, sleep difficulties, stiff joints? Like what if you kind of add those, flesh it out a little bit? What comes up?
Yeah, so if you flesh it out a bit, it comes down with post-traumatic stress disorder. I mean,
okay.
As a doctor, I didn't know PTSD caused chronic pain.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that links kind of childhood abuse, and like I know people tend to jump straight to the concept of like sexual abuse at that, but just kind of any childhood abuse, like physical, any neglect, any sexual abuse, like there does tend to be quite a high prevalence of PTSD and chronic pain in those individuals. But it wouldn't be the first thing I jump to. Like if I'm in a clinic, if I was a doctor, I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, no, definitely, that's PTSD and sickle cell. Like it doesn't.
Ironically enough, at my alma mater, medical school, the first week we did was on sickle cell.
Ever?
Yeah.
Was actually?
The first week.
Wow.
I mean, in the north of England, where I now am practicing, that's a very esoteric diagnosis. I don't think I've seen a single case. But it was the first case that we've sort of looked at.
Wow.
Well,
Yeah, so if we add those other symptoms in, we also get something that I'm thinking's a bit more of a reasonable sort of diagnosis. You know, we start to see the ankylosing spondylitis.
Yeah.
We start to see rheumatoid arthritis.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we get to the rarer symptoms, sort of like skin tenderness, you know, like increased pain on any touch, numbness and tingling, we start to get some wacky sort of ideas here.
Okay.
So we get shingles.
Okay.
Not
A
heard that in a while.
40-year-old is very young for shingles, but okay.
Would be very young. Like
Yeah.
typically for readers and listeners that don't know, is shingles caused by zoster virus can cause great pain and usually comes in a is it myodermal or dermatomal distribution. Anyway, doesn't matter. It got a typical pattern, causes lots of pain. But
It's the reactivation of chickenpox, right?
yeah, that's essentially it. Yeah. So, okay, so like for a woman, it's come up with fibromyalgia, but fibromyalgia itself is quite a rare diagnosis. So, if you're a woman in your 40s and you've got chronic pain, are you going to be thinking you've got fibromyalgia? Are you going to be thinking, do you know what? I really need to see a GP now with this little niggling pain that I've got.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you don't need to see the doctor. I'm saying that it's just so easy that we've got all this information that's pointing towards these conditions that causes health anxiety,
Yeah.
quite frankly.
Absolutely. If you think you've got fibromyalgia and you go out and read about fibromyalgia, you're going to find a lot of literature that says there's not really much you can do. Like, here's some ideas of how you can manage your condition, but realistically, you're never going to get better. And if that's not what you've got, like, that's a terrifying journey to go on so early. Like, I'm not saying, like, you don't want to get diagnosis early in the journey, but it's a lot to take in so quickly in your journey to just look on Dr. Google and say, yeah, no, you've got fibromyalgia. And you go to your GP and you go, I think I've got fibromyalgia. And then it creates a challenge for your GP as well, because they've got to kind of try to get you to unlearn that information and say, well, actually, that's a very generic guess. It's just seen the word pain and women and gone, right, it's fibro. So I guess this is where it comes in to say, like, it's important that patients educate themselves about their own health and that they go and speak to people who have done all these years of training. And I know that we've said in previous episodes that people like GPs and stuff don't get enough pain education, but you don't need to speak to a GP. Like, you can find resources like Pain Concern and Action on Pain and the Pain Association. Like, these places have chat lines and you can speak to them, and these are people who are experts in pain, both scientists and with lived experience, and they can help to inform you a little bit more about what's going on in your body. They can help you to try and narrow down a little bit more what it might be. They can point you to useful factual resources rather than kind of leaving you vulnerable to these generic softwares that just say that you've got shingles, sickle cell, etc., and put all that anxiety into someone who's feeling pain maybe for the first time in their life.
Absolutely. I think the word we're looking for here is signposting.
Yeah.
It's signposting to the most appropriate assessment, care, whatever that you need.
So, speaking of signposting, there's been a big transition in the UK, particularly in England, over the past couple of years towards primary care networks. And this is where, when you go to a GP, inside the surgery, there's not just a GP, there's a pharmacist, there's a nurse. So maybe, like, as a doctor, Josh, you can kind of enlighten us a little bit more about how we as people with chronic pain can use those different roles and when it's appropriate to go to our GP and when it's not.
Yeah, so if you've got a very stable chronic pain, you've been investigated, you've got a relatively stable plan in place, I think it's very appropriate to go to those other things. Go to your pharmacist in terms of slight alterations in medications.
Especially if you're already on medications.
Yeah. I'm talking about well-established treatment regimes. I'm not talking about go to your pharmacist to try new wacky wild drugs. Pharmacists are absolutely essential for like multidisciplinary teams. So like the whole healthcare system as a whole, very good at picking up. I'd say arguably much better than doctors at picking up like things like polypharmacy, which is when you're on a whole host of medications, the interactions between the drugs and the symptoms that they can then present, some of which can actually be increased pain and other nasty symptoms which you may think are linked to the condition which you have.
Which I think a lot of us do worry about when we are on multiple medications, but we just don't really know how to go about looking at that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a thing about stopping medications. So we call it like stop criteria. So we typically see this in older people, but like stopping those medications that actually aren't that useful anymore. So you see it a lot in 90-year-olds that come into hospital. Do we really need to be giving them the whole cocktail of medications?
Yeah.
Probably not.
If it gives you a 1% improval in your body health, but a 10% drop in your quality of life, that's a way up that you've got to make. Like, is it better that you've got a 1% greater risk of death, but your quality of life is terrible? Like, it's that decision that it's the patient and the clinician have to make together.
Yeah, so medications like statins, for example, cause muscle aches. So if you're in your 90s, is reducing your 10-year risk of a heart attack better than not having pain every day from like having sore muscles from the medication?
Yeah.
Now, I'm talking about this and about stopping medications. If you do want to stop any medications or you want to talk about your medications, do you recommend that you do speak to a healthcare professional, be that pharmacists, advanced nurse practitioners, or your doctors? It's not something that you should be doing independently unless you are a trained doctor.
Yeah, exactly. Now, we've spoken a little bit about sort of these ideas about reducing appointments, getting appointments into the right places. But Josh, you came up with a bit of a nice idea, which was, this is one of the few times when we're going to direct something to people who aren't in pain. And we're saying this to everyone who's listening, whether you're in pain or not, which is knowing the appropriate time to go and see your clinician.
Yeah.
So we did a bit of digging on Google, didn't we?
We did.
We found some things.
We did. We found some very ridiculous things. Who wants to kick off about some of the reasons why people went to see doctors?
I think I'd like to go with the first one.
Yeah, go for it, Dom.
Yeah. So there's one instance, well, there might be multiple, we don't know yet, where a paramedic reported someone coming to the ER because they realised they were homosexual.
Wow.
Dun dun dun.
Well, I mean, it's the 21st century. Hopefully that's not a diagnosis now.
Well, fucking hell, yeah. I mean, like, just, why would that even cross your mind? Why would it just be like, I can understand it would be like,
news.
Maybe it is a shattering news, but it doesn't, unless they were having a heart attack because of it. Like,
Yeah, I do want to know what was happening at the time they realised.
Yeah. There was another patient who reported that every time that they had sex with their wife, their mouth would go numb. What he didn't realise was that he was using she was using a spermicidal film, and so when he was going down on her, he was like basically eating the spermicidal film, and it was just thumbing his mouth.
I mean, perioral numbness, so like numbness around the mouth, that can be a symptom of, well, it can be a symptom of a couple of things. Off the top of my head, maybe if you've been injecting local anaesthetic directly into your veins.
Yeah.
That's possibly a cause.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There was a... sorry to keep on reeling these off, but there's one that I want to share. So just a bit of context for people listening. We often have like a shared set of notes where we've all done research together, and then we all go off and add our own bits as well. So these guys haven't heard this before, but this guy comes into the emergency department via an ambulance. He's got burns on his lower limbs. He has charred shoes. The bottom of his pants are like completely burnt away. By pants, sorry, trousers. I'm not American.
It's very confusing imagery there.
Oh, I know. Yeah, if the bottom of his pants, he's really gone wrong. No, the bottom of his trousers have been burned away. He'd been using propane-powered weed burner in his yard, like the stuff that you use in a flamethrower. I don't know what he'd been doing. He didn't. That wasn't in the story. But things have got a little out of control. The guy had alcohol in his breath, and the clinician asked him, like, have you been drinking? And he's like, no. And so the clinician was just like, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I couldn't help myself. So I just went as straight-faced and professionally as I could and looked him dead in the eye, and I just said, liar, liar, pants on fire. And this clinician was like, the paramedics just looked at me and ran out of the room because they couldn't stop themselves laughing. But apparently the patient just like didn't clock. They just didn't notice at all that the joke was. So yeah, there you go. Liar, liar,
That's
pants
great.
on fire.
Another story that I've read was from a fellow colleague, which was a 20-year-old, and his girlfriend who came in at 2 a.m. freaking out because something had torn at the back of the throat. I mean, don't ask me what they was doing at 2 a.m. to be looking at each other's throats or what have you. But can anybody guess what that might have been? A tearing at the back of the throat.
The little thing in the back of your throat that wobbles when you scream.
Yeah, it was the uvula. Yeah.
Wow. There was a story, and I'm going to let you guess which country this was in. America.
Oh.
There was a young kid who came in crying, and like the implication from the article was that this kid was probably like quite young. So we'll let it slide. But they came in crying, and he was like, "Oh my God, I think I might have got my cousin pregnant." And you're like, "Okay." And they were like, "How do you think it happened?" And he was like, "I made eye contact with her for 10 full seconds."
That's how the teachers in med school.
Yeah, exactly. And then a stork delivers the baby, right?
Yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well.
The land of the brave.
Yeah. So we spoke about appointments being something that is a big societal cost of chronic pain, and we briefly mentioned meds. Now, we're actually going to start a mini-series really soon, where every sort of 3 or 4 episodes, we're going to focus on a different drug that is commonly used to treat chronic pain. And so we're not going to talk about them very much now. We're just going to say, like, there is a lot of inappropriate uses of medicines, and for some people they work great, and some people they're really valuable, but for others it's really wasteful. The NHS procurement system is inefficient. Like, there's a lot going on there that we'll dig a bit more into in future episodes, but we'll put medication to one side.
And we will check in on how Josh is doing with his 20-hour challenge. Josh, how long have we been at this? 20 minutes, half an hour?
A little bit.
Ballpark? Do you want to show them how well you're getting on with that Oasis cover?
Yeah, let's give it a go, shall we?
That's pretty fucking good, isn't it?
That was
That's the best one
That's
he's
the
done.
best I've done so far. Diamonds are made under pressure.
Right, come on. Even more pressure. We're going to play together now. And when I say play together, I actually play a little bit of guitar, not very well anymore, but nonetheless. Did I make that much of an effort to tune it to fit with Josh's slightly out of key recorder, his slightly clunky, low-quality recorder? No, I didn't. So this next bit isn't going to be very in tune. However, it really highlights the slow progress that we're making through these 20-hour challenges. 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's good!
Oasis meets Snake Charmer.
As we can see, it needs work, but do you know what? I think this is actually the point of this sort of demonstration, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm learning a new skill. I've got no real training in music or rhythm or the ability to perform.
But you know what? To credit where it's due, maybe this is why you're a doctor and I'm not a doctor, at least not a medical one.
Give me a nice flow chart.
2 hours for you to do this is pretty impressive.
I don't think it is.
I think it's quite impressive.
Well, why don't the viewers let us know what they think? Is this 2 hours worth of recorder good, or is it just
2 hours of recorder good.
recorder good?
You've got 30 years of English bad. And you can cast your votes down below in our first ever poll to tell us what you think about Josh's recorder playing and whether he is where you would expect him to be after 2 hours. So go let us know down below. Back to the episode.
We also mentioned earlier on that caring is a massive societal cost of chronic pain. Carers are usually unpaid, poorly supported and unable to stay in the workforce. So you end up with not just one but two people who are unable to contribute economically. And that's the blunt way to look at it. But the human way of looking at it is that 95% of chronic pain carers report feeling helpless. Over 60% report not feeling certain that they can give safe and adequate care to their loved one. And 54% feel they are inadequately supported by those around them.
With an ageing population, caring is going to become more and more normal. But we also need to make sure that carers are properly supported. So we've linked lots of resources in the description for people to look through in your own time. You know, those that need extra support or want to look at areas where they can sort of get some help. Not necessarily in the actual caring, but in terms of emotional support or even financial support.
Yeah, there's a charity called Carers UK who provide loads of advice. Like, they've got a really, really nice website, very user-friendly. Doesn't matter whether you're 8 or 88, like, it is really quite navigable, and we put the link in the description below.
Navigable.
But they give advice on benefits applications, on different funding streams, like grants available for people who are carers, ways to get respite support, and they kind of give you some guidance around that. They've also got like a messenger function, so you can then reach out and ask for support from people who have been carers themselves, and yeah.
I think the important thing is just reach out if you feel like you need it,
Yeah.
or if you think it can help.
Yeah, I mean, sounds like a really good resource, Joe.
What other resources have we found? What else have we put below?
Carers.org, Don, I believe we got, which is, so carers.org, for those that don't know, it's a website that we've linked that you can just click on, type your postcode in, and it gives you all of your local care support charities.
Wow.
So, let's say, for example, you might need a break from a day. Bam, there might be a charity near you that can help with that.
Yeah, they can provide that care without you having to pay anything extra.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so carers.org, that's the Carers Trust website, right?
Yes, I believe it is, yeah.
Yeah, so there's, on Carers Trust website, like, I think none of us really knew about this. We've been lucky enough not to have to be carers in our life. But Carers Trust gave away £3.8 million in 2022 in grants to unpaid carers to help them with basic necessities, respite breaks. Like, it's there is money available, and I know that's a big stress for a lot of carers. And even if you don't want to sort of go looking for grant funding, the government does have a caring support fund. It's only sort of around £65 to £75 a week, so it's not very good, but obviously anything is better than nothing. So, yeah, well worth exploring. As we say, have a look in the description down below.
Yeah.
So, the last thing really we want to talk about in this episode is something that is kind of mentioned in academic literature as lost productivity. And what that really means is the impact that a disease, a condition, anything like that has on your ability to work. So that might be that it prevents you from getting employment. It might be that it reduces your productivity when you're in employment. So when you've got a carer and someone with pain, often they're both outside the workforce. And so that can be really economically costly. Like we say, that's the kind of blunt way to look at it from a governmental point of view. But if you look at kind of individual cases that have been shown in previous studies, there was a study in Brazil where it showed that people with chronic back pain miss an average of 80 days of work a year because of their health.
Wow.
And bear in mind, like, how many
extremely
days do you work a year? Like 340? Oh no, because weekends as well. So that's another 100 days off. So 250-ish, 240-ish days a year.
About 260, yeah.
Yeah, so they're missing like a quarter of their work days because of pain.
Wow. And do you know what, though? The actual term lost productivity is so dehumanising, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Like, what are we? Just a product? Our work is a product?
Mm.
For some people, that's what they see it as.
But it makes you feel like your only role societally is to contribute towards the economy.
Offer a service.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's wrong.
That's just a dark way of looking at it.
Yeah.
It is. It's very...
Yeah. Unless you are one of those people who are lucky enough to actually enjoy what you do.
Yeah.
In that case, woo.
I mean, I enjoy what I do.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it if I wasn't getting paid for it, though.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, like, in the UK as well, this idea of lost productivity and the way that people are treated is quite traumatic for people with pain, because 16% of men and 13% of women have to leave the work, like with chronic pain, have to leave the workforce early. Like, they can't make it to retirement age working because their condition becomes unmanageable with being in the workplace. Yeah. And there's a study in the US, which I don't know how these two values are so discrepant, but it showed that 83% of people who have high impact pain, which means like it affects your daily functions, like getting dressed, going to the shops, whatever, 83% of them are unemployed.
Wow.
That is a very high number.
And bear in mind, there's 5.5 million people in the UK with high impact pain.
That's 5 out of 6 people.
Oh, yeah. So 5 out of 6 people out of 5.5 million is just under what? Just under... It's 4 and a bit million? 4.5 million? So, yeah, crazily high unemployment rates. But then I guess that a lot of that is because it's made really hard to stay in work, or if you're out of work, it's really hard to get back into work, right?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about that study about high impact pain, right?
Yeah.
That's not the case for everybody, and for a lot of people as well, you may have high impact pain on some days, less so on other days when you can work.
It always fluctuates.
I mean, how do we actually get back to work then? That's the question. I mean, there are many ways to get back to work. Like, from a standpoint of your workplace, they have to help facilitate this. I mean, there's legislation in place in the Equality Act 2010, which states that we can't discriminate people for disability. I'm not saying people with chronic pain are disabled by any means, but it does limit your ability to function. So effectively, it's the same.
Yeah, I just want to caveat that as well. Like Josh saying, people with chronic pain, like, we're not necessarily saying people with chronic pain are disabled. We know that term can be really sort of... it's a point of a lot of contention in the chronic pain community. Some people really value being recognised as disabled, and they value the fact that it's now being more recognised. You can get blue badges and things like that for certain conditions. But some people are really fervently against that label, and they feel like it demeans them and it makes their whole life labelled by a condition, and that they're going to be seen as disabled before anything else. So, like, we are not giving an opinion on what we think about that. We're just trying to make it clear that that's a kind of your choice to give yourself that label or not.
Yeah, and I was using it purely in the terms of legislation.
Yeah, exactly. Is there anything else that we want to mention about these societal costs, or can we kind of sum it up saying the societal costs are enormous and that's why we're here, to educate people?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Cool. So, last thing for today, we are going to do our book review. So, very brief one today. Fernando Severo's Understanding Pain. This book is a nightmare to get hold of, as I found out while trying to purchase it.
I thought you was going to say nightmare to read then.
Oh no, it's okay. It's a good introduction if you've got a really scientific mind, if you've got a bit of a scientific brain and you want to dig a little bit deeper into how pain works. Mm-hmm. It's a really nice intro to it. There's a couple of gems in there, a couple of really interesting facts, a couple of really good ways that Severo's described how pain works on a scientific basis. But I wouldn't go out of your way to buy it, because it is really hard to buy. But if you do have that scientific mind, it's worth a read.
So if you're a layperson, probably not the best book to buy.
No, I mean, if you're a layperson with a interest in science,
okay,
I think
it's
not super high level. You don't need a scientific degree or anything. Like, it's accessible to people. But if you don't care about science and it's not something you're interested in, then it's not the book for you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there we go.
Ooh, are we missing something, Joe? There's something grumbling. It's just something that we need.
Oh, saying that, I do need the bathroom quite badly.
Oh gosh, it's about to get messy here.
It's that time again, Josh. What time is it?
It is the Egyptian laxative of the week.
The Egyptian laxative of the week. What is it, Don?
Oh, sorry. What is it this week? It is Dill.
So
Yes,
if
the
you
green stuff.
if you like Eastern European food with sour cream, then the Egyptians have got a laxative for you.
Well, I like the food, but I don't particularly like. The
aftermath.
Wait, where's it go in? Are we eating the dill?
This one.
What for?
Okay, so this one was oh no, it was an enema. No, it's going up.
Oh no!
Oh God, sorry. Yeah, no, right. I
Oh,
forgot about
Jesus.
that. Jesus, yeah. So if you like taking Eastern European food and inserting it into your rectum,
It's such a delicate herb.
I would just like to say, as a doctor, I would not recommend putting any food into the back passage.
wow.
For those that need talent.
Is that not efficient?
We know who you are. Yeah, that's you.
Oh, that's Gerald. Gerald in
Yeah.
the corner.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry if you're a Patreon subscriber called Gerald. We picked a random name.
Okay, done.
We got a Patreon.
Yes, indeed, we have a Patreon. On our Patreon, you can find behind-the-scenes footage. You can find more footage from our 20-hour challenge in previous episodes. You can find lots and lots and lots of outtakes. So however long you think an episode is when you listen to it, usually about 2.5 times longer.
Yeah.
So
We were supposed to go to a party.
About now.
It started 5 minutes ago.
it did start 5 minutes ago.
And I'm quite anal when it comes to getting to parties on time.
We got invited to a
Because
party,
he's
just
invited
saying.
so little. Oh, sorry.
Well,
And
right.
next week we'll be talking about how to treat burn injuries.
Wow.
Well,
Josh will be the subject of that. So come along for the ride.
so on that note, thank you very much for listening, and we will see you soon on Pain